Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Phya Aacdemy video newsletter. This week, we're looking at adversity. Hey, everybody. Always great to see you. Love sharing these lessons with you, this ancient athletic wisdom that we mine for practical application by looking at contemporary athletic stories as a way for us to grow into the best versions of ourselves, to realize our full potential. And we've looked at four different themes throughout the sort of the beginnings of this newsletter: masculinity, valor, accountability, and heroism. And there's one element within all of those four themes that I think is common. All of them give us a sense of how we should take on adversity, or how we should think about the difficult parts of our lives or the obstacles that are placed in front of us as we aim to achieve our goals. So I thought, why not start a brand new theme talking specifically about adversity? Now, when thinking about adversity, we're talking about struggle, right? We're not talking about the easy road. We're talking about the hard road. And I think I talked quite a bit about this in Heroism 1, talking about Heracles and the choice between virtue and vice. As always, you've got access to all of our past lessons in our emails. You've got that link at the bottom that takes you right to the playlist on our YouTube channel, where you get access to, my goodness, we're coming up on, I think, a dozen or so of these videos. So go and check out those old ones, particularly Heroism 1. But when thinking about the ancients, right, and especially the ancient Greeks and their ideals of athletic heroism, or athletics as a means to cultivate good character and to essentially train the best kinds of citizens, it was all about adversity. And the Greeks liked struggle. They incorporated struggle into their philosophy of learning. There's a saying in the ancient Greek world, pathemata mathemata, and that means guide your learning through pain, right? Anything that's worthwhile in terms of doing, in terms of knowing, in terms of becoming, comes through the struggle, comes through the hard road, comes through adversity and overcoming it. And athletics is perhaps the best cultural institution that humans have ever designed, that forces us into a kind of an artificial adversity as a means to train us to become responsible and accountable, right? Because when you're training, you've got to do those hard things, right? You've got to get up before the sun to get your run in, right? You've got to go to the gym. Like, you have to make all of these initial sacrifices. You go through all this adversity or resistance even to start your training, to start your exercising, to start on your road to competition. And then we all know that there's additional adversity, right? The physical adversity of having to push your body, to push it past the point of no return, through pain, through lack of motivation, right? But when we fulfill these tasks, right, we become responsible to ourselves, we become responsible to our future selves, and we become accountable to the decisions that we've made. And this prepares us, in a sense, for the travails of life, the difficult roads that we all have to follow in our personal lives, in our careers, in our social circles, with our health, with our faith. Like, we all will face adversity. And what makes somebody great, what makes somebody heroic, because we've talked a lot about the ideals of heroism, is their willingness to sacrifice, is their willingness to embrace adversity, to engage in the struggle with a genuine effort, I guess you could say, in terms of overcoming. Sometimes we don't overcome. Sometimes we succumb a little bit, or temporarily. This would be the idea of losing in sport, right? We don't always get to win when we compete, but it's through that struggle that we gain the necessary lessons to allow us to try again. to never quit, to not stop. And it's that willingness to sacrifice, that willingness to struggle that allows somebody to become heroic. But we have to accept that adversity will be part of the journey, and we must learn to love adversity. Now, I teach sociology of sport in addition to history and philosophy, and one of my favorite examples of the sort of the positive ideal of sport, right, that it functions in our society to lift people up, to teach them through adversity how to behave, not just in sport, but in all these other facets of life where we're also going to face adversity and struggle. And this gives us the kind of the outline of the rags to riches story, you know, of the troubled kid who finds sport, turns his life around, becomes a superstar, and lives the life he always dreamed about. Those stories, they're not happening to every single kid that picks up a basketball or a football or a hockey stick in terms of becoming a superstar. But the idea that sports can be used to turn yourself around, I think, is a very powerful and obvious idea that we've seen in society with tremendous results for thousands and thousands of individuals. But sometimes it does take an extreme example or an extraordinary example to make our case. And one of my favorite examples in the professional sporting world is that of Caron Butler, a famous basketball player. Caron Butler was not on the path to success in life, to put it mildly. By the age of 12, he was dealing drugs and engaged in gang violence. By the time he was 15, he had been arrested and sent to juvenile detention centers 15 times. This isn't obviously somebody who's on the path to greatness or somebody who's on the path even to a prosperous or positive life. When he was 15 and in juvenile detention for the 15th time, this was after I believe he had just tried to rob a Burger King. Actually, no, I'm getting the story a bit wrong. At the 15th time in prison, he makes sort of a pledge to himself because he's found basketball in a sense, and he knows that this could be something that could be his ticket out of this lifestyle, but he's got to dedicate his life to him. The Burger King story is kind of interesting, actually. So he makes this dedicated turn in his life, and he's got kind of like a local parole officer or an officer who's arrested him and a few times and knows that Caron is trying to make amends and trying to do the right thing. Eventually, he does get caught up kind of like one more time. And that's when he is in the Burger King and he's robbed. But this officer knows Caron, knows he's trying to change his life's trajectory, and essentially gives him a bit of a pass so that he doesn't have to get sent straight back into juvenile detention. This ends up being the last time he has a run-in with the law. Him and this police officer actually become really good friends. And I'll save a funny little bit for the end of his story. Okay, so Caron dedicates his life to basketball. He's got tremendous talent and skill. He's picked up by an advanced preparatory school in the United States. This puts him on the radar for a major scholarship to the NCAA. He joins the University of Connecticut in the early 2000s, a powerhouse program. He leads them to a magical Final Four run and is one of the most impactful players in the tournament. This leads to him getting selected in the NBA draft in the top 10, signing a multi-million-dollar contract. He becomes an all-star and an NBA champion, right? So the struggle of basketball, the struggle in the discipline of going to practice, of training, of practicing, of refining your skills, right, of being a student athlete, all of those things that you have to struggle for to get to the pros, he did, right? Caron's life didn't necessarily get easier. He just shifted the adversity that he was willing to endure, right? He didn't want to deal with the adversity of the legal system or criminality, but rather chose to embrace the struggle of elite athletics and their pursuit. And Caron is one of my favorite examples, because he's not just somebody who improved himself in body, but it's somebody who also exemplifies the complexity and the holistic nature of the athletic hero ideal, right? That unification of body, mind, and soul and spirit. So clearly physical achievement. I mean, an NBA champion and an all-star. He's made over $88 million in career NBA earnings. Intellectually, though, this is not somebody to be taken lightly. Somebody who actually took his studies seriously. He's now an accomplished broadcaster and also an author, someone who speaks very intelligently also about social issues. And this sort of leads to his moral reformation. He's also a successful businessman. Funny enough, he's bought, I think, something like 12 or 15 local Burger Kings franchises. It's kind of a nice romantic end of the story, I think. But he's someone who's really taken on a large advocacy role for prison reform, and one of his big crusades is the ending of solitary confinement, which I think pretty much everybody can agree is a horrifying and inhumane treatment for somebody, especially for people who are not convicted of violent offenses, which is something that's common in the United States. So this is somebody who is clearly used athletics and athletic struggle and that adversity to become a better person. And that's really the idea of athletics, or the ideal of athletics that's brought to us from the ancient Greeks. I thought an interesting story to highlight this would be Theseus and the Minotaur. If people have been following me on Twitter for the past week, you'll know that I've probably listened to this story about a dozen times. I played it to my young daughter, on a podcast. It's called Greeking Out. So it's like Greek myths for children. And she loves this Minotaur story. Oh my goodness. So I figured, why not incorporate it? It's also, I also wrote about it in my book, The Athletic Hero. So I think it's a great story, but kind of funny. Okay, so Theseus and the Minotaur. The Minotaur is this beast. He's half man. It's sort of like he's got the torso of a man, but he's got the bottom legs, 2 legs of a bull, and the top head of a bull. He's this horrifying, strong monster that lives on the island of Crete, and he has to be kept in a labyrinth, like a big maze that's dark, and he's locked away from the people of Crete. The people of Athens eventually get into some hot water with King Minos. He's the leader of Crete, and rather than go to war, they make a deal to send 7 boys and 7 girls each year as a sacrifice to the Minotaur. Right, so you're sending teenagers basically to be sealed off in this labyrinth and to be essentially eaten by this Minotaur. Theseus, he's the son of King Aegeus of Athens, and he, after 2 years of sending these teenagers, he says, enough is enough. Like, we have to stop this, and I'm going to go. I'm going to be one of the 7 youth that are sent, and I'm going to go kill the Minotaur and end this horrifying tribute to King Minos. So here we see adversity, right? It's like, which of the struggles are you going to choose? Either way, the people of Athens have to struggle. But what Theseus has done heroically is he's taken on the struggle for himself, right? He says, no, I'm going to place it on my shoulders, even though I'm a prince, essentially, right? He's a very privileged person in his society. He's the one who's got to risk, right? That's what leaders do. So he confronts fear and struggle directly, right? He's sent off to Crete. He's basically put away with the Minotaur, although in the story, he uses his body, mind, and spirit to essentially defeat the Minotaur, right? And the story it's a pretty fantastic story. He uses his intelligence to kind of woo the daughter of King Minos, the half-sister of the Minotaur, to help him. He has sort of spiritual help in the form of a magic ball of yarn that leads him back out of the labyrinth, right? Because it's pitch black and you get lost and disoriented very well. He uses his strength of body to slay and defeat the Minotaur in a frenzied episode of combat. Right? So he's showing us, again, all of the important athletic attributes. And Theseus himself is kind of an athletic hero. When he comes back from Crete, he stops at Naxos, an island, Delos, an island, and obviously comes back to Athens. In each of those spots, he founds athletic games, right? So there's this intriguing connection between Theseus, the foundation of athletics, and his visit to Crete. There's some interesting mythological and historical relevance, especially the chronology of this episode. So again, if you have any interest in that, my book, The Athletic Hero, details this in quite good specifics. But essentially what we want to take from the Theseus story is this notion of adversity and accepting it and embracing it as the means to overcome it, right? And that's where we need to reflect, and that's where we need to apply. So what does it all mean? We all face adversity. We all face adversity in our lives in many different areas. Again, I'm facing a tremendous amount of adversity right now living in Canada, dealing with vaccine-related restrictions, we'll say. To me, this is a struggle, not that one that I have chosen, but one that I must embrace and embark upon in order to preserve the dignity and freedom of people who live in this country, even if most of them want to throw it away. And I think we all have those struggles, right, in our life. There's a block. Maybe it's physical. Maybe you're not exercising as much. Maybe it's intellectual. You're not reading or challenging yourself enough. Maybe it's spiritual or moral. Maybe you're not connecting to the divine or practicing enough, right? We all face adversity. We all face a struggle. The lessons of Caron Butler, ancient athletic wisdom, and the story of Theseus and the Minotaur tell us, suck it up. We all struggle. Adversity comes for us all. And adversity is actually what we need in order to fulfill our potential, to reach greatness, and to strive. And so we have to understand that adversity is a paradox. The only way we can overcome adversity is to embrace it. The only way we can become comfortable is to embrace discomfort. The only way in which we can achieve is to struggle. So what we need to do in each of our individual battles, whatever they are, and they may seem trivial to people on the outside, but these are great travel. These are great trials to us, right? To us individually that we have to go through. The best thing that we can do, because we're not getting rid of any adversity, nor should we want to get rid of adversity. What we want is to embrace adversity so that we may overcome it and achieve our potential. All right. See everybody next week. Thank you so much. Have a good one, everybody.